Okay, so in this video I'm going to document the progress or failure of replacing a clutch master cylinder in a 94 Dodge Stealth. We're working on the paint job, but that's become a secondary project. Last night I'm going to come around and show you the clutch pedal. As I was in here, the clutch pedal just decided to go to the floor and just stay there. So there's no movement at all in the clutch pedal. A couple days ago I replaced already the clutch slave cylinder, which sits down on top of the transmission, almost between the cylinder block and the transmission. Slave cylinder is this guy right there. I don't know how you can see it, but that's all replaced. There had been what's called a clutch buffer part sitting there. It's inside. I'll show it to you later. I promptly stripped the threads on that thing, and it's another $80 to get a new one of those from the dealer because no parts store really sells them. So I just one of the common modifications on a clutch is to remove that buffer. It makes the clutch a little more sensitive. So I've just bypassed that. So what I'm going to be trying to do without any help, because my son's taking off on me tonight, is replacing the clutch master cylinder. Here's the new part. About $39 at AutoZone, and be trying to get it in. It looks just like the old part, so that's good. Here's step number one, and we'll update later. Okay, I took that master cylinder out of the package, and it looks like that. It's got the plunger that goes in through the firewall. The firewall sits here. This plunger hooks to the clutch pedal back here. This whole thing's new. I was told to get a set of these. They're crow's foot ratchets for brake line work, and the reason is because of this little fitting, little brake line fitting right here. Is right there. It's really hard to get off because it's kind of down in there, and that's kind of the first thing you need to do. So I grabbed one of those, and hopefully that'll make the job easier. I'm going to start taking that fitting off, I believe, and draining as much of that brake fluid out of there as I can. So that's step one. Okay, I got that brake line off, and step two is to take the bolts out of, or the nuts, I guess, the bolts to that master cylinder stick through the firewall, and they should be right up in here. There's the bottom bolt right there. The top bolt's behind that plunger shaft. Next step's to take those off, and I'm thinking, obviously we take the plunger shaft. There's a lock nut on the back side of that I'll take off. That plunger shaft will just unscrew out of that little U joint right there that attaches to the clutch pedal. I'm thinking after these two bolts come off, that master cylinder should just come right off. Alright, after about 15 minutes of trying, I did get those that plunger rod off and the two nuts that are hold the master cylinder on. There's the two nuts. There's a cotter pin that's attached to the U-bolt connection on the plunger rod that came off. The top nut was not easy at all to get off. It's a 10mm. If you have a swivel socket 10mm, that will help you tremendously in that process. I don't, but I got it done anyhow. It does look like this master cylinder is ready to come off of there. It fell loose just as I got the second nut off. It's kind of loose, so see if I can wrangle this thing out with its home. Yeah, it's loose in there. Might take a little finagling to get it out away from these lines. The other thing I did decide pretty quickly is that you need to relocate or just move out of the way these air conditioning lines. be careful with them because they're charged, and if they get a leak in them, your AC won't work. So I'm going to see if I can get this out of here. Okay, old master cylinder is out. After wrangling with it for 10 minutes, found that there was this little wire down here had wedged itself between this bolt and the housing and wouldn't let it come up. Kind of stupid. I spent 10 minutes figuring that out. But anyway, that's the old one, and the new one is going in, so I guess the process is just reversed. So I'll slap this one in there, see if it makes any difference. I'm starting to have my doubts. This old one doesn't look bad, and you know, so if this doesn't do it, I'm going to be real frustrated as to why that pedal has no return on it. So we'll keep going, let you know what happens. Okay, I got the new master cylinder in. I was able to get those bolts, both those nuts on. And then I also put that linkage in. I want to show you this because it matters later on some of the adjustments on this. I've turned the camera upside down, so the top part of the screen is actually facing the firewall. You see the push rod that comes in from the master cylinder is right there. I'm sorry about this. The master cylinder push rod is this rod here, and you can see that there's a nut there that's a locking nut, and we're going to have to be screwing this rod in and out to adjust the pedal travel to the correct free play distance. I'll show you that a little bit later. The new cylinder's in, none of the lines are hooked up, so this is still operating kind of the same way it did before. So we'll get the hydraulic lines hooked up and put some fluid in it and bleed it and see where we're at. I am hooking up the brake lines to this, and I did want to show why this little crow's foot wrench is so important here. That little nut way down in here in the wheel well, there's just no way on earth you're going to be able to get to this little thing and do this that I'm doing right here with a wrench of any kind. You're not gonna do it. You need this socket attachment crow's foot. The 10 millimeter. I had to buy a whole set, but even the whole set was $20, and it's a decent set, and I guarantee you will save you $20 worth of headache. So don't start into this job without one of those. Okay, the clutch master cylinder is in. We filled the clutch, the reservoir up with brake fluid, and then we drained. It's very important to drain all the air out of these systems. When you've done something like this, opened up the system, gets air in it, and if you don't get all that air out correctly, it's not going to operate correctly. So there's a little drain valve on these. Luckily enough, I guess some of them don't have it. On the slave cylinder, there's a little drain valve that you can open and close. And the process, and I'm going to point to it with this screwdriver. I don't know if you can see that, where the screwdriver's pointing right there. Nope. Anyway, it's up in there, kind of hard to see. The process is you start with the pedal up, you open the bleeder valve, you push the pedal down slowly, you close the bleeder valve, and then let the pedal up. On this one, it took quite a bit of pumping the pedal, probably a good 4 or 5 minutes with no response at all from the pedal, to pumping it to get it even to a point where it had any pressure at all on that pedal. So now what I'm going to do is show you the pedal free play adjustment. This is a real important part in doing these. If you don't adjust the clutch pedal right, if you don't adjust this plunger, this is the old one, but if you don't adjust this plunger length correctly right here, then the clutch can't self-adjust. The hydraulic portion can't self-adjust for a clutch that's wearing out, so I'm going to show you how to do that next. Okay, so the clutch free pedal adjustment is, like I mentioned, really important. Every manufacturer has specifications for how much free play is at the top of the pedal. And the free play, and it's hard to explain, it's hard to show on a video, but basically the free play is the amount of pedal travel that you have at the top before you start getting some resistance. And while there's not zero resistance up here, by the time I get to about here, I can feel a definite difference in the clutch resistance there. So this distance that the pedal moves here is called the free play. And on the 94 Dodge Stealth, the owner's service manual indicates that free play should only be an 1/8 to a 1/2 of an inch. So you can see that there's quite a bit more of that than 1/8 or 1/2 of an inch on this. I do have a tape measure here, and typically the way you do that is you put a tape measure up against the firewall or some set point, and you just measure it. I can't do that with one hand, so I'm going to set this down, and then I'll report back to you what it was. Here, let's set this here. Measuring it now at rest, it's about 5.5 inches from the firewall, and the free play here looks like it's about 3/4 of an inch, which isn't too far out of spec for what this is supposed to be. I'm going to get another angle on that. 5.5. Yeah, actually, there's about a good inch free play, which means there's some adjustment needed. Now the adjustment is actually going to take place on this adjusting rod. Sorry about the herky-jerky camera motion. But this rod we talked about earlier, that's the clutch adjustment rod. I don't know how well you can see. Yeah, there it is. You can see I haven't tightened that nut down yet. But to get less play, what you want to do is screw that rod in a clockwise direction. Let me think. I think a clockwise direction to firm the pedal up. So I'll do that and then recheck. Okay, so I screwed that adjuster rod clockwise about 1 full turn. And again, this is almost impossible to show with a tape measure, but the free play now is about 1/2 inch, which is at the high range of the manufacturer's spec. I think I'm going to leave it there for the test drive. So the clutch cylinder, master cylinder, slave cylinder is in. I bypassed the clutch damper, and it's time to button things up front and go for a test drive. Okay, so we're here on the test drive.
What exactly am I videotaping?
You're videotaping me test driving this vehicle.
Oh, just watching you
to see if the master cylinder, slave cylinder, clutch replacement project was a success. First of all, it does fully disengage. I can tell, and this is not exactly a flat street, but I can sit here and rev the motor on a flat, and it doesn't have any creep forward, so that's a way to tell it's disengaging. As far as the engage point, it seems like it engages about halfway up the pedal, which is okay. I guess it's kind of a matter of preference, but there's really no good way to tell you exactly where that should be. It doesn't seem to be slipping. I put it under some stress and the motor doesn't rev, so it appears like it's working functionally. The gears go in and out really easily. No issues there. Really no issues at all. Before it was occasionally kind of hard to get into first gear, hard to get into second and reverse. I will say that without that buffer there, the clutch is a little more sensitive. The grab zone, I guess, the friction zone on the clutch is narrowed up. Before it seemed like it was about a good 2/3 of the clutch travel pedal. Now it's probably only about 1/3 of the pedal. So that's it. Looks like we did it successfully, and you can too. Okay, bye. Here is that clutch buffer part. All this does, it's got a clutch hydraulic line coming in and one going out, and it just looks like a cylinder, just an open cylinder in here about the size of a shot glass. You can see it's got little orifice plates on the in and the out, and it's just a straight pass through. Evidently it's just meant to make the clutch a little smoother, a little more user friendly. So these things, you can't buy them at auto parts store. You got to get them from the dealer, and I was quoted about $80 for one of those. So I decided to leave it off, and turns out looks like it was a good decision. So there you have it.